Hey, it's Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Wednesday. It is September the 23rd. This will be our chart lesson for today. And really, today was nothing more than a range day with this is a center line of the two-tiered channel. And if you measure this first channel, which most of your price action was in there, and you drag that down, it gives you a measured move. Right down there, almost a perfect measured move, and then we reversed. We never could get back to the highs again. We actually shot through the midline here, but we worked back below it, and it continued to hold the rest of the day. This is well after 2 o'clock anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But, if you just played the shorter term trends within, got you through the day, worked out pretty well. Um, so let's back out, talk about the trades that I saw. And it was kind of interesting. I got at least two different people that asked me about first entries today. I guess because there were a couple of first entries that I think this was one that somebody asked me about, and then coming down, somebody asked me about one. Might have been over here somewhere. This is basically a first entry, but this is not so much a first entry as it is a trap. When prices turned up off and turned back down there, went out the top side, you know, I like that for a short. So even though you could say that's a first entry, it's really not, because you're counting off this side, and it's a second entry counting off the high. So because this is your first leg down correction, then you're looking for your second leg, and you don't know it's going to do this. But that's the beauty of it. Sometimes you catch one, and anybody that caught that trade, you caught a runner, guaranteed, and you can ride that all the way down to the target, or exit anywhere in there that you want to. So, but first entries, I tend to stay away from them. I don't like this one, so it does come right off the trend line. The only time I like first entries is at a really strong trend that's going up like this. It just keeps going and going and going. Otherwise, I do not like first entries. I think you're better off to skip them. Like here this was a nice looking first entry, and look how it backed up, and then you got a second entry and it takes on off. So just be very careful about first entries. But anyway, let's talk about the trades. Notice what happens here. This is a sure sign of a reversal. We're working up. Um, we really don't get a break here. Maybe I've got this line a little bit. It's probably more like this. We really don't get a break there. Um, but we got an overshoot here. And sometimes an overshoot will lead to a reversal. But look what happens here. We make this little high, and we look how we just shot right through. The EMA didn't give any resistance there at all. I mean, we just rocketed right through. And look how much lower this low is than this low and this low. That's telling you something's changed. May only be temporarily, but something's changed. And then we work back up, and guess where we find resistance? Right across here where we found it previously. And we get a first entry short, we pull back, and this is a second entry short here. But what I like more than anything is it turns down off of this resistance, and it's a failed second entry long when people may be looking for a new high. But if you're paying attention here, this is a classic reversal pattern. And once we started lower, just look and see just look for a measured move right there. You can see we came within a tick of a measured move right there. We ended up going a little bit further, actually, by maybe a tick. But the reason it bounced here is it bounced off the lower trend line. So this was a nice setup, and this is technically was the original signal bar, but it's a matching. I wouldn't. This is bearish. I guess it's okay if you waited it to break lower and maybe used a limit order. But I liked waiting on this bar and dropping a limit order in, and you could have gotten filled all the way back up here to the original spot, and it just drops. And then look, it comes back, it pulls back, you get a first entry, and it fails. It's almost a perfect repeat pattern of that, right off that trend line again, and just go short right there. And it actually pulls back. These are the ones I like to add on. It makes a triple top there and turns back down. So you can either enter here, or you can just add on here. I like adding on. If I would have been in right here and then just add on right here, and moves down to a new low. Um, I looked at this like a spiking channel, but it could be that I just don't have this exactly right. It may be more like this, and then this was the break and a move to a new low, and then we got a new one. But even on this larger one, we ended up getting the break and new low here. But I kind of struggled with how to, which one was right. This one really doesn't fit well. You can see that. I guess it possibly could right there, and you get a little overshoot here, and you touch it, and then you get the break and a new low. So I guess maybe that works, but it still does not fit really well to me. So I ended up looking at this like a little flatter, that this was just a little overshoot up here. And notice how it fits well there, and it's fitting well off the lows. So that's the way I went with it. The midline fits well. And the only problem is that your break, you don't get a retest at low here, but sometimes that's the way it works, and you just have to go with what you got. And there's a shorter term one working up here, and then you get a break and a couple of legs up to a new high, and it turns down. But there's also this larger one here. You can tell this is a valid trend line. There's probably a midline in here, even though I didn't draw it. You can see it working right across there. Go ahead and put it on there. And this was a nice rally up. I really don't see anywhere to enter that. It's just not a good setup going back up through there. And this was the first break of this trend line, so you got to be careful. You don't really want to be going long. Like I said, there's a first entry there, and it pulls back, and there's a second entry right here. The reason I like this one is because that it traps people. You actually have this trend line if you drew that, and this confirmed it. I don't like that signal bar, but when this one formed right beside it, I'm okay to go long right there. And look how many times we bounced across this support here. We tested it 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we make a higher one, and that trend line is holding. So this looks like a range. And so I'm okay, and the fact that prices are swinging back and forth, I'm okay to go both ways. You don't get a good short setup because your second entry is not a very good bar. And if you did go short right there into that trend line, when it touches it and bounces, you got to exit that. So hopefully you didn't get fooled there. I think this is one where you actually kind of wait and see if you don't get a short trap, because look how when it came through the EMA, it didn't really get much resistance. It just shoots right on through, and then it pulls back, and it kind of bounces around both sides till it starts closing above and then turns higher. So that, again, that's that reversal type pattern that we look for, where you likely get a trap. And it seems like maybe somebody did send me an email asking about this second entry short here, and it failing. But they had a nice bearish bar there. But hopefully you saw the trend line working up. And then, of course, you get the pullback and you get the first entry. We already talked about that. That's a very aggressive trade, especially with that doji there first. I think you're better off to skip that and just wait and see what happens. And then look, we turn down. We don't get that big shoot through the EMA, but you don't get a lot of resistance there. And then you get that little trap. And this is a obvious trend line right here. And when it goes higher and turns, it goes out the lower side. I'm okay just to go short there. And you figure we're working back to here, because that's kind of the range area. And if we do go on through, then you look for the measured move, and that's exactly where it goes. So this was a great setup. And if you caught this one trade, you could have made a bundle and been done by 10:30 or 11 o'clock today. And that's the kind of thing I like to do. Catch a few runners, and you get a big trade that moves like that, and you catch a few runners, and you get, if you just got all of that move, you figure you get in at 33 at the worst case scenario, and if you get out at 23, that's 10 points on one contract. You got a nice trade there. So I didn't like this one. It's the first entry. There's not much room to scalp out right there. I didn't like this one either. Again, it's a first entry, and this is what I was talking about. You don't really have a lot of option on these except to enter in a first entry, because it's not wide enough to really get a good second entry. So this was the closest one that looks like one leg, two legs back. But I also like this one because notice that double top and this lower low and then a lower high, and that's a big bearish reversal bar. You figure then we're probably going to get that last shot down to right here to test that low. to test that measured move. But also, this was your first leg, and then you look for a measured move here, and that puts it right down in there too. So, um, and there's just 2 legs in this last leg, but we couldn't get any lower because you're finding that that's that measured move, and you see there was the first half of the channel, and there's the second half of the channel. It's a perfect measured move down. It actually went a couple of ticks more, but it didn't close any lower. And then you start kind of chopping around. There's a second entry along there. I don't like that bar. This bar, by the time you get this bar, it's too big, too close to the EMA. So just wait, and then you get that failed second entry short. Definitely don't go short right there. Notice how we're climbing up that trend line, how everything's stacked up. And this is where they fool people, and it reverses instantly. Just go long right there. Quick, easy move, and then you're pulling back. First entry, pull back second entry. It did go through the trend line here, but look at that big reversal bar. Just go long above it, and boom, off it goes. That was a great setup right there. And then again, it pulls back, and you get a first entry. And there's a trend line up through here. You can see that. And you get your break, move to a new high, and then it's going the other direction. You can see that little channel working up through there. Break, and that's a first entry again, and it's a huge bar. Now, I guess on this particular one, it's a pullback to the EMA. We did get through the midline, and it did hold a support right there. What I would be okay with on this one is a green circle right here for an aggressive entry, but when it breaks higher, dropping a limit order back here, and it would have come back and filled you. And coming back in here and getting filled where you got a much smaller stop, I'd be okay with that one, and where you can get out before you get to that high. It didn't matter, it shot on up, but you never know that it's going to do that. And you could have anticipated this area to turn down here by dragging this trend line on up. Once we went through, you got to get a measured distance between these two, and that's right here. And we touch it to the tick, turn down, and then it tries to go higher. And look at that big bearish bar, and look how far away it is from the EMA. You know you're coming back to that EMA there. We've already had the break in the new high, and we have that trap right there and that big bearish reversal. I like that for a short. I mean, prices have been, this is definitely a range day at this point. This is late in the afternoon. And then you get the failed second entry long right around the EMA there. And look at, this is your signal bar. Look how bearish it is. You can't go long above that. I don't know what your chart looks like, but I doubt it looked any better than that. And it turns back, it turns down right at the trend line. That confirms the trend line. That's a failed second entry long. This is a big bar, but I'm okay with going short right there on a stop. I'm not sure if this is the low side of this or if it's on down here and there's a midline in there. It doesn't really matter. But the way I played it was right down through there. I still like that for a short because I was more interested in this move back down to here once we shot right through there. This might have scared you away because it's right into that midline. And if it did, I understand, but I like this because of the trap. I like it because how bearish it is, how quickly it turned and rolled down right there. And we did get an overshoot. That usually leads to a break of your trend line, and guess what? We do get the close outside on the break, a move to a new low, and then we're going the other way. This is very flat right in here. This is after 2 o'clock regardless. It's around 2 o'clock's right in here somewhere. So there's no other entries. You definitely don't want to, you just want to stay out of that. Look how flat that is. Look how it's up and down. Now that is a trading range, and if you draw your lines, you can find the highs, and I guarantee you can find some setups in there even though it's too late in the day. I'd probably call this one right across there. You get the most touches and closes. Maybe I'd call it right there. But look what happens. You fell out the top, you fell out the bottom, and you just spend the rest of the day inside there until you come out the top, and it kind of fails and comes back. Pretty typical what you'd find, but you don't want to be entering in there. It's after 2 o'clock. So again, in the end, it's just a big 2-tiered range. Not much else we can say about today. Drawing these shorter term trend lines will definitely help you. Smaller ranges within so forth, that's going to help you as well. But again, going back to those first entries, stay away from them. You'll miss some trades, but you're better off to miss a few because more times than not they will fail and you'll get burned. So um, they're just not high probability unless it's a real strong trend. So this one's tempting. That's a really strong trend, so it's tempting. I don't think I talked about this either, but this was your first leg down, and when we started down again here, you want to look for that for a measured move too, and see that gets you back down in that same area as well. So just remember that. Those measured moves really help, and if we would have kept going higher this way, I would have measured this leg and found the very low right here, and that's what I was looking for earlier because I thought, hey, if we get through this resistance and keep going higher, we'll look for a measured move on this. But we didn't get it. So, but good trading day. There were a couple of nice moves here. Right out of the gate, there was a nice move, and then this was a nice move. This was a great move here too. And you just never know when you're going to get those, especially on range days. You're more likely to get them off the highs and the lows. Your key entry points are more or less the highs of the trading range and the low of the trading range, going long, high, going short when we're trading a range. So just remember that. That's where your key entry points. You'll usually find some entries off the midline, but it's not as reliable. And so you got to be careful about entering around those. The real key entry points are short off the resistance and long off the support and looking for the failed breaks. So, but anyway, I'm going to wrap it up for today. It's a little bit late. It's 7 o'clock now, and I'm just now wrapping this up, so it'll take me a few more minutes to get it uploaded, and I'm sure there's people looking for it. So I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. This is Mack with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.